Welcome back to Meet the Owners. I'm your host, Joe, and today we have Brian on the show. He is the owner of News4U and lots of other things, local entrepreneur, and we're going to get into it. So tell us about the couple businesses you do. We're just talking here, and you have a lot.
Yeah. I was, funny because you're like, we're going to try to keep this length. And I'm like, there's no way that's going to happen. This is going to be really long. So you guys may have 4 videos out of this.
It's true.
I've done a lot of different things over the course of my life. And the interesting part about it is that none of them have been planned.
Really?
It's just happened. And so when I was 11 years old, my family owned Opus One Music. From like 1980 until about 6 or 7 years ago when my family sold it and retired. But we were in Northbrook Plaza where Schnucks is. And I noticed there was an Apple store next door, which people don't know that Evansville used to have an Apple store. And I would go in there all the time because I've always loved, Apple stuff. And even when I was in middle school and learning to type, we would use Apple IIs.
When did the Apple stores close down? Because I don't.
In mid 80s.
Oh,
mid
yeah.
80s in Evansville, yeah, because
Way before my time.
Because we moved there in 1980, so well, no, not mid 80s. Yeah, mid 80s. If I was 11, then that would be, 83, 84, 85, 86. I don't remember exactly, but it was where, the resale shop used to be, but it was right next door to us, and our space was where the hair salon is right now.
Nice.
So anyway, I noticed at 11 that the windows were all dirty. People would come touch them, and kids would, lick them and do whatever else. And so I started a window washing business because the entirety of North Park is all big, huge plate glass windows inside and out. And I'm like, okay, well, so that was my first business. And then just as time went on, everything that I did really wasn't planned. And recently I had a exotic auto dealership for 30 years that I just retired from a couple of years ago.
Did you sell it off?
And we just closed. Because the part of that is a lot of times when you own a business, a lot of times you're the business. Because in the past I would hire people if I had to be out of town or whatever, and I didn't want to lock up my shop. I would hire people to answer the phone, talk to people that came in, sell them something if they wanted it. And invariably people would call or come in and want to talk to me. So that this person that I hired became a secretary, and they would call me on my phone when I was driving down the highway because they wanted, or it's like, hey, so-and-so came in and they wanted to talk to you. It just the way that it functioned, it wasn't really a business that had a lot of value other than the customer list. But with the internet now, you can get customers 1,000 different ways, and there wasn't that much of a value to what it was if I didn't work it every day. And so I just closed, but and then the magazine. And we talked about, I've got a property company. I have rental real estate, and we've got a farm that's been in our family 230 something years.
That's a long time.
So, so we operate that too.
What do you guys farm?
It's changed over the years, oddly enough, because when I was growing up, we had chickens, horses, cows, pigs,
The works.
honeybees. We grew tobacco, winter wheat, corn, soybeans, all kind of stuff. Now it got so expensive to maintain cattle because of the vet bills and the feed and all that.
Wow.
Pretty much all we do is corn.
Okay.
Because corn is so profitable anymore, and there's such a demand for it, because basically you've got to feed people, you've got to feed animals. The government mandates that gasoline has a certain percentage of ethanol in it, which is corn. So in order to produce gasoline, they have to use corn.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, so corn is extremely profitable. And you have to either land, you either have to switch it to soybeans every other year or every couple of years, or you got to let it sit fallow for a year. But pretty much all we do is corn. And there was even some like little, areas of trees and ponds and stuff on our property. We filled all that in and turned it into land.
Oh, wow.
So, and then we've got some, we've got oil wells on it, and, a coal mine and some stuff like that. So, they still operate that stuff, but it's mostly just corn. I mean, just animals are so expensive to do anything with anymore that it just didn't make sense.
That's a bummer.
So
what are you doing? You have News4U now. You have
property company, Fingers, Fork, Knife, and Spoon on Facebook, which is completely that's turned into something that I didn't even envision really.
What did you envision?
When I started it, and actually we just had an anniversary. We just had our 9-year anniversary on March 9th, 2016.
Congratulations.
So it's 9 years old. And when I started it, honestly, it was it was one of those things that I would post. I used to travel all the time for my auto dealership because I would go to, deliver cars to customers, buy stuff from people, go to pick cars up, go to the auctions in Nashville or Cincinnati or wherever. And I would go to different restaurants and I'd just post, I'd take pictures of what I ate and put it online. And people were like, oh, that's really interesting looking. What is that? Where are you? And so then I started describing the food a little bit more and the restaurant and taking pictures of the restaurant and the menu and whatever. And I'm like, hey, if you're ever in Columbus, check out the Nightcap, or whatever it was. And it just sort of evolved to where everybody was curious about what I was doing and where it was. And I just started posting online, and then I was like, well, I was actually an admin on Tri-State Restaurant Reviews,
Okay.
and so the founder of that page and I just always butted heads because I tended to lean towards it was a page where anyone can post anything. They can post a question. They can say, hey, I went to this place and had lunch, and here's some information on it, whatever. So it's publicly generated content. My page is self-generated content.
Is
So
it all you now who
it's
posts?
all me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all me. So
Very
if people can ask me a question or they can comment on posts, but they can't say, hey, I went to Deerhead Tavern, which is where we are today.
That's right.
So
Shout out.
we'll give a shout out to Chuck. But you can't put your own stuff on my page. I've got another page that's called Tri-State Restaurant Guide and Reviews, I think is what it is. But and you can do that. That's the same thing as Tri-State Restaurant Reviews. But my page is generated content by me only.
Okay. Before that, did you have a passion for journalism or anything like that, or it literally just came out of nowhere? You're like, hey, this is some good food.
No, it's it's one of those things where I was always, and this is a strange part of it too. I was always terrible at math. I mean, terrible. Like I would count on my fingers when I was in college, even, and it's like I was so bad at math, but I was always good at writing. I was always really good at expressing myself in the written word. And I always enjoyed it because it's kind of like telling a story, and and you can share information with people. And so I would always write. And we're oddly enough, and I don't think this has anything to do with News4U at all, but when I was a kid, I used to type my own newspaper.
Oh, really?
So I would have a story about a dog or a horse or whatever, and put it on a piece of paper. And but I enjoyed writing even back then. And so when I was an admin on Tri-State Restaurant Reviews, we would butt heads because the founder of it would say, well, people have the right to post whatever they want. And I'm like, no, they don't, because if it's not true, you're hurting the business. I would always, kind of fall to the side of the business. And there were some situations where people would post, that, oh, hey, we went to such and such place, and this restaurant's closed anymore, so it doesn't matter if I mention it probably, but we went to the Dapper Pig for lunch, and it was $28. Well, the owner at the time reached out to me also because I had my page then, and they're like, no, that's not true. Their lunch was $12 and they had an alcoholic drink and a specialty coffee. So yes, technically lunch was $28.
That's where they get you.
But you can go and buy the lunch for $12, and people would say, oh my God, that's so expensive. I can't afford that. That's $30, blah, blah,
So
blah.
they have a pretty big following. Like it was.
Yeah, but
influencing the
it was
business.
misrepresenting the information because you didn't get lunch. You got lunch and an alcoholic drink and a coffee. So lunch is not $28. Lunch is $12. But then people read that, and there's this, the human psychology of it, this bandwagon effect where, oh, I'm never going to go there and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you can't let them put this on this page because it's not true. It's not factual. Here's the receipt, and it's like, here's what they ordered. I've got a copy of the receipt, from a picture. And I'm like, this isn't true. So what had ended up happening was I was writing for Evansville Living. Also, I had a column in Evansville Living, a food column. And I was like, you know what? I can start my own page because I think there's enough people that are interested. And I can get away from Tri-State Restaurant Reviews because he basically said, if you start your own page that competes with that one, he's kicking me off as an admin. And I was like, that's fine,
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So I started my own page, and that way the content could be correct and factual and accurate. And if people want to post a bunch of nonsense somewhere else, that's fine, but it's not going to come from me. And the whole point was me being a small business owner for so long. I understood how difficult it was, and I wanted to support that. I wanted to help people and just be like, hey, come try this pizza. I had a great steak here, whatever. And that's sort of what the page evolved into. And then today it's become something totally different. Not totally different, but it's evolved from
It's
what I
pretty
used to
big.
do. Yeah, it's gained a lot of followers. And see, one of the things that I didn't do at the beginning was I really didn't pay attention to the business aspect of it. And it's not exactly a business, but I guess it is. And I would just post whatever I wanted. And I didn't pay attention to the Facebook algorithm. I didn't pay attention to what time people, liked my post or read it the most often or whatever. I just posted whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And so then, as time went on, and especially the last 2.5 to 3 years, I started using Business Suite, and I'm like, oh, if I complete all these tasks, Facebook puts me on the algorithm. It recommends my page to other people.
Mhm.
So I started paying more attention to it as a business, I guess, and as something that you want to grow organically, and that you want to use Facebook and use what they offer you, the tools they offer to make your page or your business better and help with the
Yeah.
exposure and the marketing and all that. And from my car dealership, I was one of the very first car dealers in the country to have a website and use the internet to sell
Really?
cars. And so I've had experience with that for years. And so the page was just a natural progression of that.
When you
So
updated your Facebook page with that information and doing the steps, did you see a significant increase in
oh yeah.
views, like real quick?
Yeah, I mean, when I started paying attention to it, I could tell you what it is. I've keep like a track of, each year or each date, milestones,
Mhm.
20,000 followers, 25,000, 30, whatever. And I can tell you when all that stuff happened. But yeah, a couple of years ago, it got to the point where the last 15 months, we've been averaging 1,200 new followers a month.
Very nice.
And I know some multi-million dollar businesses in town because I've had lunch meetings with one of them, and they had 1,200 followers total, and they've been in business 18 years. And I'm like, so you're averaging 88 new followers a year.
It's
And I'm like,
interesting.
and you've got somebody that you pay full time to do your social media. I'm like, they're not doing a good job. I'm
Yeah.
sorry,
Well, some of
but
those companies just need better content. And then there's other Facebook or companies that have Facebook. And I'd be like, where's their website at? They don't have a website and they got like 20,000 followers and
yeah.
Facebook is their website.
Yeah, and,
It's
and that's
interesting.
that's one of the things that I try to help people with also, and it's also a pet peeve because there's another business in town that owner is super nice, really nice person, had a lot of passion for the two different businesses that she had, but her business on the east side didn't have a sign.
Oh,
And so she didn't have a banner. She didn't have one of those wiggly guys, to get people's attention and say, "Hey, pull into this parking lot and come do business with me." She didn't have one of those yellow signs with the arrow, but she bought a billboard. And I'm like, so you paid, however many thousands of dollars for a billboard with your address on it. And when people drive by that address, it looks like an empty, closed building. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. You're driving traffic to your address, but when you drive by, it doesn't look like you're open.
that's interesting.
And I'm like, so, just the logic that people have, and the lack of understanding of marketing and human psychology, because that's literally what it's about. If you're in business, if you do any sort of marketing, advertising, if you want customers to come buy something from you, take some psychology classes. Go audit psychology classes at U of E or USI. You don't have to take the tests. You don't have to do anything, but get the knowledge, because that will help you in your business. And I even did that one time. I took a real estate course, a realtor's course,
Okay.
and I told the professor, I said, I'm not going to take any tests, and I don't care about getting my realtor's license. And he's like, well, what are you doing here? And I said, I just want the knowledge. And he's like, oh yeah, but you could do this and you could do this. And I said, well, for what I want to do, I don't need a realtor's license. I own a property company. I've bought and sold, all kind of properties and operate them now as rentals. I don't need a realtor's license for that. You don't have to have it. And so one of the problems that I had with it was that in order to be a realtor, you have to work for a realty company for like 2 years, which means I would have had to have gone and worked for FC Tucker or Berkshire Hathaway or whatever. And I told the professor, I said, no, you don't. I said, here's what I would do. And this is what we talked about earlier with us not having an actual office. And I don't want to go and pay rent to somebody else. I said, here's what I would do if I wanted my realtor's license.
Mhm.
I'd start a realty company. I'd hire brokers and I would hire realtors, and I would work for XYZ Realty Company. Even though I owned it, I'm working for that company. So I would get my deal or my realtor's license in 2 years, and we can buy and sell properties for people with the brokers and the realtors that work for me, instead of me going to work for somebody else. So that's just been my mindset my entire life, and that's kind of what we talked about before, is that if News for You needs an office space, which we are planning to do in the future, I'm not going to pay anybody else rent. I'm going to buy the whole strip center,
Yeah.
that, or buy a strip center or a building that has 3, 4, 5 tenants in it, put my office in that, and let the other tenants pay rent to me.
If you had to choose a side of town, what side of town would you choose in?
I would put it in Newburgh
Really?
because I live in Newburgh.
Oh, that
But the
makes
problem
sense.
is my editor and my graphic artist and a couple of other people that work for the magazine, they all live on the west side.
Okay.
So probably in this area or downtown would make a whole lot more sense for everybody. It's kind of a central location, which I'm fine with. I'm not, I own several properties like literally within about a mile of here. And I wouldn't mind being, in this area. And there's actually a really nice little building for sale. And property in this area is cheap. And if you
Okay.
improve it, you just, shoot the value up through the roof. But it doesn't have other tenants. So I would want something like a little strip mall that has, like I said, 5 or 6 tenants in it or whatever, or a building that has separate. I looked at a couple places on Fulton that had 26 different office spaces in it, and I got really, really close to buying it. A whole other story, but the owner decided that he didn't want to sell it. And I'm like, well, what am I doing here looking at this then? I'm like, why am I meeting your realtor? And why am I, I'd talked to my bank, I'd talked to everybody already.
Oh,
And then he's like, oh, well,
you were in deep.
we're going to wait another year. And I'm like, why'd you just waste 2 weeks of my time? I'm like, well,
It's got some negotiation
So, yeah.
tactics we don't know about.
yeah. So I was like, whatever.
I just saw. I don't know if they closed or if they moved, but there was a salon on Franklin Street next to Milk and Sugar that opened up. It's for rent, but I
Yeah,
don't know if
Brent
it's for-
Target owns that.
Oh,
I
really?
know the owner of it. But I would see the same thing. I would want something that has multiple tenants. Because that's what I always talk about, just on the realty side of it. I had this conversation with someone yesterday, young girl, she was 23, and she's like, I want to buy my first house. And I said, go and buy a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex, live in it, let your tenants pay for everything. You could with 3 tenants, you could live rent free. It would cost you nothing. They would pay the water, the electric, the mortgage on it, everything else. And if you go get an FHA loan, you get really low interest rates, and you have to you don't have to put a lot down. So you can buy this property, live in it. And then I said, if you want to pay this thing off in 8 years, put everything that you get from rent into the bank loan. You pay the water, you pay the electric, and you pay the property taxes. And when the property is paid off, you move out, rent it. You can go to the bank and get a 75 to 80% loan against the property. So if it's worth $1 million, the bank will give you $750,000, and you go and buy more properties.
Okay.
And you do the same thing.
I have a friend who talks
And-
about this
yeah.
actually a lot. He's pretty passionate about it.
Yeah.
So
And so,
Heard
and no, but that's the thing, is you move into that building, you live there for a year or two, let everybody else pay the bills. You move out, rent your other location that you were in. So now you got 3 tenants, 4 tenants, whatever, and then you go buy more. And when I said, if you do that until you're 30, you will be able to pay cash for whatever house you want to buy, and all of these properties will pay for it. And also, as people don't realize this, but as a married couple, if you're married, you can make up to $300,000 on a property sale and not have income tax. But you have to own it for 2 years and live in it. So you have to live in it for 2 years. But as an individual, you can make $150,000 in profit tax free, or as a married couple, you can make 300. And I'm like, if you can do that 4 times, if you can buy a property, live in it, make it nicer, improve the value, get it rented, do that, or even homes. If you can, buy a home that's in a nice neighborhood and it needs a lot of work, and you make $300,000 on it 4 times, you got $1 million in cash to go pay whatever for the house that you want.
Is that
to
what you
live
do?
in. No, well, I got started late. I started my property company late,
Oh.
honestly. I focused on when I started my dealership when I was 21, like right out of college. But I had been messing with cars since I was 15. And so I went to college, and I've got a degree in clinical psychology and a philosophy minor from Indiana State. So my intention, because my dad is a PhD, he was a clinical psychologist, he's retired now. My intention was to go into private practice with him and just be a clinical psychologist. Well, my temperament for people, and I've got a real pet peeve just about like not having common sense that just really irritates me. And he would have patients that would come because I used to work in his office. I had to do that for college and for some research teams that I was on and whatever else. And people would come to him and pay him for advice and for some help on what they should do with their life. And he says, if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. And this is positive and this is negative. They would go and do exactly what he said not to do. And then they would come back and complain because what he said was going to happen happened, and it was negative. And my personality, I would be like, look, you're wasting your money, my time, your time. Don't come back. If you're not going to come here and pay me for good advice to help you and help you figure things out you can't figure out yourself, and you don't listen to me, there's no point in coming. And so, just the way that I grew up and the TV shows had a big influence on that. I got into cars. And so randomly, when I was in college, I got accepted. I was on like 2 or 3 research teams as a senior, and I got accepted straight into a PhD program.
Really?
So normally,
what were you going to school for?
Clinical psych. Yeah, clinical psych.
Oh, okay.
So normally you go for masters, and then it takes 2 years to get your masters, and then you have to apply to PhD. Well, I got accepted straight to PhD. And so I could have gone and done that, and I just ended up taking a year off. I was like, I'm burnt out. I'm gonna, do whatever. I can always go back if I want to, and that led to my car dealership.
So how did your family feel about you year off and starting a car dealership?
No, well,
because you were washing the windows for a while, so they're probably like,
yeah. I
this.
washed windows when I skipped over a whole lot of stuff. I had a lawn mowing business.
Okay.
I had an auto detailing business, which is how it led to the dealership, because I would, high school and college, in the middle of the summers when I wasn't in school, I would detail people's cars. And I got to meet a lot of my dad's friends, his attorney. I would do their cars, and a lot of his friends at the hospital and whatever else. And so sometimes they'd say, hey, I want to sell this, can you help me? Or, hey, I'm looking to buy this, can you help me? So I started doing locating, and I started helping people sell their cars just on kind of on the side as an individual. And, they didn't mind me not going back to school. They didn't, I got really, really, really good grades in college. I hated high school, and I absolutely loved college. So, I graduated with like a 3.76, I think, and like I said, I was on like 3 research teams and taking, advanced classes and whatever else. And oddly enough, when I went to college, I tested out of math. As bad as I was at math in high school, I tested out of math. So I never took a math class at all in college. And it's like I just hit that age where it clicked and it made sense. And so that's an odd kind of aside. But no, they were really supportive, and they did not mind me not going to school, but they wanted me to do something. And I was like, well, I'm detailing cars, and I'm, buying and selling stuff with people and whatever. And so one of my friends was a wholesaler, and he hated selling cars retail. And I loved retail people, and I didn't like dealing with the dealers or the auctions or whatever. And oddly enough, the first 10 years that I was in business with my dealership, I never went to an auto auction. I got inventory just from people, from trade-ins. People would know that I bought certain things. They would call me. I would go search out something I was looking for and go, bring it back or ship it back or whatever. And so that's how it turned into the dealership, because I started selling cars for him. He didn't want to retail. So I would sell this stuff retail and, make a commission or whatever. And then after a while, he'd be late for appointments. The paperwork wouldn't be done correctly. And I'm like, well, I could just do this on my own. And then so I got a little space and got my dealer's license and started with one car.
So we've talked about all these cars. What was your favorite car you've owned or you've had on the lot and sold?
Man,
probably a lot.
That's like, that's like saying, what's your favorite restaurant? It's not even possible. I'm a big, at first I love Porsche.
Okay.
And I actually founded the Porsche Club region here in town. It's the Southern Indiana Region Porsche Club. I founded that like in 2000 or 2001, maybe, I think. And so I always had Porsches when I was younger. Then I kind of got into Mercedes-Benz, and I'm a huge Mercedes-Benz fan. Probably one of my favorite cars that I've ever had. I've had a couple Bentley Continental GTs, and I absolutely love those cars. I think it's the ultimate daily driver. You can put 4 people in it. You can take luggage to the airport. It's all-wheel drive, so you can use it in the snow. It's fast. It's super comfortable. It's got all the, luxury amenities and all that. And so, for like the ultimate daily driver, it's a Bentley probably. Man, I've had all kind of Ferraris and Acura NSX and Lamborghinis. I mean, a Ferrari 355 is probably one of my favorite cars. Just something you don't have to drive every day, but just to own. A Testarossa is another one probably.
Okay.
But I mean, a Rolls Royce is an awfully nice car, and
It
I
really
just
is.
all kind of crazy stuff. And there's fun stuff too. I mean, you can go buy a Mazda Miata and have a ton of fun with it, even though it's not super fast, it's not expensive, whatever, but it's a lot of fun. So I like stuff that has a good driving experience too. It's not exactly what it is, and a lot of people get caught up on, a lot of people get caught up on, oh, it's a 2024, it's new, blah blah blah. If someone said you have $10,000 to spend, I would go buy an E-Class Mercedes for $10,000 before I would buy a Toyota or a Honda or anything else, because it is a better car. It's better built. If you take care of it, it's going to last longer. And for me, it's not really, what it is, but it's what you get for your money. And so, I just have that weird outlook. But I mean, I'd buy a 25-year-old car just because of what it is. And I know some people that are embarrassed that their car is 5 years old. And I was like, well, who cares? I was like, what does it matter? It's like some of that stuff. I mean, some of these early Bentleys, you can go buy these things for 30 grand. And they
Really?
were
I
a
had no idea.
$170,000 car new. It's a lot of car for the money, but the problem is you have to be able to maintain it and insure it.
Mm.
So there's other expenses that come with it. But I'm just, I'm one of those where, I'm just not the normal, regular, car guy that you see, whatever you're driving, you see it on every street corner. I'm a huge fan of G-Wagons too. I love Mercedes G-Wagons. And I've had 3 of those, and I'm getting ready to get another one. But I know this probably sounds all like stuck up and snotty, but I've just always been into cars. I mean, and it's because of, I grew up with Knight Rider, Dukes of Hazzard, Smokey and the Bandit, the A-Team, and like one of the things in the A-Team face, the good looking guy in the group had a Corvette. And so I've just always been into cars, and I just sort of gravitated. I actually really started out liking cars with Corvettes. And I knew like everything you could possibly know about them and everything else. And it just evolved. And then I was like, well, Porsche 911s are kind of cool. And Porsche 928s, weird science. And risky business, with the Porsche 928s that were in there, I'm like, these are cool cars, so it just sort of evolved. And it's sort of like, if you can afford to do whatever it is that you enjoy, whether it's a vacation, buy a house that you like, cars, whatever, you should do it. You should do it. And I've told customers before. I had this one lady, her husband was a doctor, and she got so mad at him because he was buying a 911 from me. And I'm like, you don't work. You have a huge house. You guys have like multiple kids, and you can go do whatever you want. You can go to the racket club. You can, go golf. You can go do things with your kids. You can just parent your children. He could be out chasing women around. He could be at the casino. He could be doing drugs, whatever. He's buying a car. I'm like, who cares? Let this guy enjoy his life a little bit. And
And
one of
you're trying to
those.
get that silly.
Well, it's no, but that's true. I mean, it's even, even if even if you think you can't afford something, I think that you should enjoy life. And I have told people before, I'm like, everybody should own a Ferrari at least once in your life. And even if you can't afford to pay cash for it, if you're not in debt, if you own your house, whatever, go get a bank loan. Go get a loan, buy a car that's been serviced. It's got new tires, the timing belt's been done, everything is done on it. You're not going to have to do anything to it, and own it for 6 months. Own it for a summer and then sell it. You're not going to lose money on an older Ferrari. You'll probably make money. You're not going to lose money. It is not going to depreciate. Enjoy it, own it, and sell it and pay your loan off. And at least you said that you had one throughout your life. Because same thing, my grandmother did the same thing. She always wanted a red Jeep, and she could have gone to the Jeep dealer and written a check for whatever she wanted to. She was real frugal with her money, but she could have gone and just paid for a Jeep. $30,000 back then, whatever it was. And I said, go buy a Jeep. I said, who cares if you lose $5,000 on it? Who cares? That's not going to affect you at all. Go sell it after a year or whatever, but own that Jeep. Do what you want to do. Enjoy your life. And she never did. She never,
Oh,
she
what a
always bought an
bummer.
Oldsmobile, but I'm like, you can afford it. Go do it and have fun. And even if you only have it 6 months, you got the memories and the experience out of it.
So that was a great. We talked about cars there for a while.
I know. Sorry.
I know you're good. I love cars. Not as much as you do, but I find it very fascinating. Thank you for watching part 1. If you'd like to watch part 2, please click here. Have a wonderful day.